Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast Show, hosted by the Fantasyholics Podcast Network. Again, coming at you live on YouTube. Brant, I don't know about you. I'm sure it's more so for you than it is me, but it's almost Christmas time. Next week's the NFL Draft. I know you will be representing 1/2 of the Fatboyz Podcast Network on draft day. I know Derek's going to be there. Maybe you and Derek can meet up. I think it was Derek I saw that's also going to be there from the Fantasyholics. There's somebody else going that you're going to have to meet up with. But I do know that Brant is going to be easy to find. First of all, he's way lower than everybody else, so you won't see him height-wise. But if you see like a section of crowd like moving, but you can't see what's there, it's because there's a little boulder of a human being coming in there. He's like 5'4", but 380 pounds. And he will be wearing a Fatboyz Fantasyholics shirt coming through the crowd. I'm glad that's what you were upset about, Brant. Not the weight.
Just remember, I'll have a big boulder and like almost billboard shaped buddy right in front of me with our Fantasyholics logo on there.
You should have him carry your championship trophy all around the draft from that
man,
home league.
I should. If he would have finished last, that probably should have been his punishment.
carrying your championship trophy around for the NFL draft. Yeah, so definitely look forward to getting lots of pictures and videos of you there. Hopefully you represent the Fatboyz /Fantasyholics well in Kansas City, and hopefully whether it be your dad or our mutual friend Jacob Toft, who is going with you, will let you sit on their shoulders so you can see what's going on stage, as we would hate for you to have wasted your time going there and not be able to see who's being up there. Anyway, actually, one last bit of advice. When everybody else boos, just boo, because it probably means Roger Goodell's up there, and you're probably safe to boo at that point. So you don't have to be on shoulders for that part of it.
All boost and somehow turn out just great.
I'm sure what you said there was hilarious. I did not hear it. We're going to come into our this episode today, coming at you with a little bit later of a start time. Both of us had a pretty busy day today, but nonetheless, some good content coming you guys' way. We're going to do our My Guy episode, and our My Guy episode's a little bit different than a lot of others, in the sense that it's not just one guy that I love this year, and we're going to stick our necks out on these guys early. We each have a rookie. We each have a guy going into somewhere between their second and fourth year in the NFL, as well as an established veteran. And we're going to try to defend on why these guys should withhold value, why these guys should be more valuable, more sought after than what they are currently, and basically try to let everybody else get in on the love that we have for these guys. So, Brant, I know we were talking a little bit beforehand. I think we go ahead and start with the rookies since it's draft season. We start there, and then we work our way up to the established veterans, maybe the guys that have a little less value in dynasty just because they're up there, but nonetheless can still be productive. So, I'm excited about this episode. I know you're excited about this episode. I'm sure next Monday is going to be a little worse as far as excitement, because I know that you only have one day left of work standing between you and a vacation where you get to eat barbecue, drink some brewskis, and talk football all week. So hopefully we can find something productive to do next week instead of just getting up here, you talking about how you and Jacob Toft are going to snuggle in an Airbnb and how you're going to play guess the stain on each other's shirts.
I hope I don't get too many stains. I got to keep that shirt nice and clean to make sure that people can represent or be able to read it and know where to find us.
The QR code will not work if there's a barbecue stain on it.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get that done. I'm hoping that does work out to my advantage. I got a friend of mine making up some shirts for us. If you happen to catch me early, I'll be there Thursday and Friday. I'm hoping to have a couple shirts also to pass out. So if you catch up with me on Thursday or Friday, I should have hopefully at least a shirt or two still left. So we'll be passing out a little merchandise. But yeah, I'll be down there.
Safe to say you're willing to let people be after your Lucky Charms.
Yep.
Right.
Don't worry about the colors, guys. They may or may not match our favorite team's colors that may or may not have been on purpose. I may have a red one and I may have a lime green one. Just saying, it may have been a little bit on purpose.
All right, fair enough.
So,
all right, Brant. So, without further ado, do you want to kick us off with your rookie here, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, kick us off. I'm gonna kick us off with a guy I've got to watch quite a bit. He actually played for my favorite college team in the University of Notre Dame, and that's people, and that's Michael Mayer. I absolutely love this guy. I think he's going to go into the league, and I think he's going to have a very productive first year. I know most tight ends have to wait. Normally it's that waiting game. We saw, with Kyle Pitts, he had a good first year, but it wasn't anything to really write home about. And, you always have those tight ends, but let's look at the fact of like Greg Dulcich last year. He finished, he had a good year, came out of nowhere. This is a guy that's not coming out of nowhere, but I expect judging by his mock draft and his landing spots, I absolutely am excited to see where he goes. Now, if he goes somewhere and has to sit behind a Travis Kelce, I think my love may wear off a little bit. This guy, he's just a big guy. He has no problem getting out there. He's 265 pounds. He's from Independence, Kentucky. He last year had 67 receptions, 809 yards, and 9 touchdowns. 12 yards per reception. Over his last 2 years, he had 67 receptions last year and 71 the year prior. He's a guy, he's got good hands, body control, he's got good speed, he has no problem going over the middle. And like I said, he has no problem blocking or anything else. So I absolutely love this guy again.
Yeah, Brent, I know you've been infatuated with Michael Mayer because I remember you talking about wanting to draft him at the end of last college season, talking about how much you were looking forward to this year's draft due to that. So hopefully maybe you get to see him even be drafted on day one, and that would be a cool thing in its own right. Now, I do have a question for you that we haven't really talked about this a whole lot on our show, but not only necessarily for Michael Mayer, but where's the best landing spot in your mind for a tight end, including Michael Mayer, I guess, at that point?
I absolutely love Green Bay. Green Bay really don't have a tight end on their roster right now. Tight end. I think he's a guy that could definitely there's not much in front of him. So I mean, I love it. I love it. I love it in Denver. Houston is a case also with the young QB. Carolina, I'm really not sure about. I know that they don't really have a whole lot on the roster. They did sign, I believe, Hurst this offseason. But yeah, those are 3 of my favorite spots. Is Denver, Green Bay, and probably Carolina, because I think he could really compete for that starting role.
Denver's an interesting one for me because just to the fact that, just like you had mentioned, Greg Dulcich is there, and he did do so well in his rookie campaign. But, in years past in Denver, we've definitely seen a 2 tight end set. So, it wouldn't shock me to see him do that there. Definitely on board with the Green Bay one as well because of Jordan Love and guys, he's been around for a while, but he hasn't started. So he's got to have that security blanket, if you will. And then also Houston is another one that makes a ton of sense for me. Just like you mentioned, obviously, if it happens to be Houston, they either have to trade in the back half of the first round to get a tight end or take one in the second round, because Houston, I don't see them wasting either of their first 2 picks in it. But Houston would be an ideal spot fantasy wise for one of these tight ends to go. And there's tons of them in this class. I just know Michael Mayer is your favorite.
Dallas. I don't know if you said Dallas whenever I had to talk to one of my children real fast to see what was going on with my internet here. Dallas is another great spot right now too. That could be a possibility.
Sure. Yeah. Dallas wouldn't bother me either. There's no established tight end there now that Dalton Schultz is gone. So definitely another good landing spot there that maybe we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show. I'm not sure. So Brant, for me, my rookie, my guy is a guy that I kind of planted my flag a little bit last week when we broke down some later round rookies that we thought would get drafted at some point. And that's Tank Bigsby. And he did not play for my favorite team in college. However, I did watch him play against my favorite team a few times when he was at the University of Auburn, as I'm a Mizzou Tigers guy. But Tank Bigsby, I just kind of like I alluded to last week, I don't want to beat anybody to death with the stats on him because of, the fact that I did talk about him last week. But this is a guy who's a big-bodied dude who has established himself as being able to run fairly well in the SEC, which again it's my humble opinion. It's don't take it to the bank, whatever. But I do think that's the most pro-ready conference in the NCAA. So Tank Bigsby's battle tested in my mind. And again, he's got the name of Tank Bigsby. There are some question marks around his catching, which obviously his pass catching, which is obviously going to be a question that we're going to have to wait and see come start of the NFL season and where his landing spot is. But if this guy goes anywhere where he has a chance, I'm talking, the Miami Dolphins or, Chicago, or someplace similar to that, even Carolina at that point. This could be a spot or those could be spots where I think Tank Bigsby could have a lot of value and could potentially hit the ground running. But again, I'm infatuated with this guy. I've liked him for about as long as you've liked Michael Mayer. You can attest to that. But I will tell you, if he goes someplace like, Indianapolis or someplace like that, just kind of like you had alluded to with Mayer going behind Kelsey, I'm going to be a lot of tampered expectations, a lot less high on those guys than where I am now. But as of right now, if I was one of those people who was drafting prior to the NFL draft actually taking place, which first and foremost, I'm going to say not a fan of that because landing spot means so much. Tank Bigsby would be he would be up there for me as far as running backs being drafted and coming off the board early.
Yeah, absolutely. Tank Bigsby is a guy that I've watched a little bit of film on as well. He looks like he has all the makings of a back in the NFL. He's one of my running backs. When we get to talking, is because looking and did if they use a high on a running back that any running back or in a first or second round, I think they could really hit the ground running there.
Absolutely. Again, it just depends on landing spot with Tank Bigsby. He's either going to be a guy that you're drafting in the first round of your rookie draft, or you may not sniff him at all on a 2-round rookie. So it'll definitely be depending on landing spot with him moving forward. So, all right, Brant, hit me with your 2 to 4 year guy. I'm excited for this group here. You've mentioned it to me before where you were thinking about going. I'm interested to see if you stayed there.
Before I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. I couldn't decide who to go with. I am sticking with the one I think I told you on Friday that I was, and I'm going to talk about Jerry Jeudy. He's going to get a whole offseason of Russell Wilson. He's going into his 4th year. He's had injury, banged up with injury. We saw Denver's atrocious offense last year. I saw him go up and down over his first couple of years in the NFL. First couple of years in the NFL, he didn't really have an established quarterback. Wilson was out just doing his own thing with his own QB coach, doing whatever the heck he wanted to do. Well, guess what? Now there's a real coach in there in Sean Payton. They're going to get off season. They've already worked out a little bit. Although that golf cart accident for Russell Wilson may scare me just a little bit. I saw that earlier today. But yeah, I'm extremely high on Jerry Jeudy this year. He's one of the better wide receivers coming out of the draft class in 2020. So I am extremely excited to see what he can do. Some people had him comparable to his hand and his ability to find the open areas was almost comparable to the way Tyler Lockett was. In the alpha role, but yeah, Jerry Jeudy's one of the for this.
Yeah, you definitely you hit the nail on the head there a couple of times, but the biggest thing for me is Russell Wilson and Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, for that matter, can't be any worse than they were last year. I'm not sure that is possible for any of those 3 guys. Definitely have to be on the upward swing, but I could see, especially in a dynasty league, Brant, I'm a Jerry Jeudy owner myself, and the right price, I could see somebody prying him away from me. Now, obviously, I am one of those folks that's a little bit believes in the bounce back a little bit more. So for me, I'm not going to let Jerry Jeudy go as cheap. You know, and I own Cortland Sutton in another league too. I have very similar affects when it comes to him, but you know, I could see being in a dynasty league with somebody who, you know, who wants to try to get some return for Jerry Jeudy and potentially being able to you know, pounce on him and get him for somewhat cheap in a trade, and having that, like I said, hopefully that rebound, that bounce back, if you will, like the bunch effect, that bounce back rebound, and you know, just have a stellar season and get back to the Jerry Jeudy that we all, you know, thought was coming into the league. So go ahead.
Not to mention, he's still only 23 years old, still young,
Exactly. There's still plenty of youth there. So for me, my 2 to 4 year guy, I also struggled, and I'm going to come at you with a guy I don't think I told you about at all when we talked about who we were picking for this episode. But before we do, Brant, I wanted to put an honorable mention out there because I feel like this guy's being slept on a lot, and I haven't been paying as much of attention to him as I should, because I just wasn't able to get many stakes in him. Last year, there was a rookie come off the board last year, and including a lot of people, myself included. I'm sorry if words were a little easier for me. I'd be a poet. Anyway, he got drafted, and a lot of people had really high expectations for him, and then some just devastating news came out. And I'm talking about Jonathan Mechie for the Houston Texans. Now, something did just come out the other day. I read that he is going to be a part of training camp and trying to work back with the team. So I'm, you know, holding out hope for this kid, that he's able to get himself back on the field. Not necessarily for my fantasy relevancy or my fantasy team or your fantasy team. You know, honestly, take fantasy football out of it for just a moment. I'm hoping that kid comes back and he's able to relive or live some of his dream that he had. But, you know, I think there's a chance that Jonathan Mechie could still be one of the more fun fantasy football players if he is you know, anywhere near what he was prior to his diagnosis. And again, I'm rooting for the kid, and I thought long and hard actually about talking about him here. I just don't know enough about his actual diagnosis and where his progress is at on that to put it out. So I'm going to move on to a Green Bay Packer here. Going into his 4th season, that's A.J. Dillon, the quad father, if you will. There's a lot of reasons that I'm really excited about A.J. Dillon, Brant, but a couple of the biggest ones are he's trending in the right direction. All right. You know, obviously last year the numbers in Green Bay were just a little bit down for a lot of folks outside of, you know, like Christian Watson. But in 2021, he finished as the RB 23 in PPR formats, and last year he finished as the RB 26 in PPR formats. So 1 year RB2, the second year right outside of it, but still a very, very flex-worthy player. And I tend to believe, whether this Jets trade with Aaron Rodgers gets done or not, I don't think Aaron Rodgers ever suits up for the Green Bay Packers again. And so I think that offense is going to take on a completely different dynamic. And I do genuinely feel, Brant, that Aaron Jones takes a knock, not enough to where he's going to be, you know, unfantasy relevant. I'm not pressing the panic button necessarily on Aaron Jones. I just think that it'll be more of an uptick for A.J. Dillon because they're going to have to do more simple pounding the rock. There's going to be times where they're going to have to run the ball more than they have in the past. And I think we're going to come into a year where we see A.J. Dillon out-touch Aaron Jones in carries by at least a 2-to-1 clip. I think it's coming this year. I think you could see A.J. Dillon have somewhere near 10-plus touchdowns this year as well. I don't want to necessarily say it's going to be a breakout season, but I think when I come to my rankings, there's a chance this guy maybe end up very, very close to, at the very least, a very high RB2 there in Green Bay.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of last year, we saw a big role there in Green Bay. So I absolutely could see the uptick coming, even with Rodgers being there. Like you said, I don't expect Rodgers to ever begin for the Greers. Huge uptick for A.J. Dillon. I expect to see both Dillon and Jones in the high RB2 categories in most rankings. I know probably mine included. He'll probably be between 12 and 15. They'll probably be sitting back to back in my rankings, because I do expect that to be one series is Dillon, one series is Jones, Dillon's Jones all the way through the game. Even works. I think I don't see either one of them.
Yeah, I like you said the 12 to 15. I think that's 100% spot on to where AJ Dillon's going to be for me. And again, in a dynasty league, if you're sitting someplace where the AJ Dillon owner is not a huge fan, or isn't loving the potential, and you could go get him for somewhat cheap, I think the time's now to strike before the iron gets too hot, because it's going to get to the point where you can't touch it. Similarly to the trade value skyrocketing that we caught on this podcast with Travis Etienne last year, I think AJ Dillon could happen this year as well. So if AJ Dillon's somebody who tickles your fancy, you may want to go get that done prior to the start of the season, because it may be too late after a 2-touchdown performance.
Absolutely. That itch right now. The last one, it's our wide receiver multiple times in his career. He's going into his 5th year, and this is a little bit of a homer pick. That's DK.
Brant, who'd you say? I'm sorry. Who'd you say? Okay, there it is. You were cutting out a little bit at the beginning. I didn't know if you gave away the name or not yet.
No, it's DK Metcalf for my Seattle Seahawks. I expect to be talking about him as a top 3 wire. He's getting a full offseason of knowing who the quarterback is that's starting. Even if Seattle him to take Go's role this year, unless somehow miraculously they in the offseason, I expect Geno to still be the starter all year next year. And I expect a huge uptick in use for DK Metcalf. He doesn't have he's already established the chemistry with Geno. He'll have a whole offseason to work with Geno. He's the big body guy. I expect Pete to start moving him around more. I expect Seattle to go back to that offense for the play action. So I expect a lot of extra work for DK Metcalf, and I expect him to see a lot more chances at DK guy that I'm absolutely would be loving to be able to own this year.
Yeah, DK, I traded for him late in the season last year in our home league, Brant. And I have been, and when you told me that you were coming after DK, I was, talking about DK, excuse me, I was ecstatic because I can't get enough of DK at this point. I definitely think he submits himself as a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL this year, as far as, physicality, as far as other NFL teams having to come game plan for him. Obviously he's a completely different athlete than a guy like Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill. So he's going to have to use some of his stature and things like that to make up for some of the speed those other guys have, which DK is very, very speedy as well. It's just not as quick as Tyreek. But I'm definitely excited about DK. It's odd that I'm going to be rooting for a Seahawk that hard, but I'm going to be. And honestly, I hope Geno continues to look as good as Geno did last year, because that's great for DK and Tyler Lockett owners across America, whether you're a Arizona Cardinals fan, a Falcons fan, or you're just a casual. It's good to see Geno Smith playing good football because it's good for fantasy. So yeah, Brant, I'm definitely on board with you as far as DK. I will say that DK doesn't necessarily match the trend of my last guy or your last guy. And Judy, I'm not sure you're trading for DK this offseason, not unless you're willing to pay a premium.
Oh, yeah. And DK did, one of the stats that stood out to me was DK did, I believe he finished inside the top 12. I'd have to go back and look completely, but he did that with only 6 touchdowns last year.
Yeah. There's no way DK, a guy with his size and ability and strength and everything else, doesn't have a positive touchdown regression next year. There's just no way it doesn't happen. I would at least say he could get somewhere near, that double digit mark. Again, I don't want to put my foot too hard in my mouth here, but Yeah, I think DK takes a big positive step forward as far as his touchdowns this year.
I'm going to go ahead and put this out right now. We may have a special guest in the background noise for me. My mother just walked down in, and if you think I'm loud and you happen to hear my mother in the background, you'll see where I get it from.
Yeah. Mom's definitely louder and smarter than you for sure. All right. So my veteran that I've got, this guy's going into his 8th season, Brant. And this one I did tell you a little bit about. And this one you did say you were ready to meet me with a little negative enthusiasm on your end towards this guy. But we'll just wait and see where this goes. So I'm talking about Dak Prescott here. He's going into his 8th season, like I mentioned. And he is coming off a career high year with interceptions. He had 15 total interceptions last year. And I know, if you were a Dak owner last year, I think it was 18th overall or 17th overall finish in PPR has probably left just a tremendously nasty taste in your mouth as far as fantasy goes. But in over 50% of his seasons, because he's going into his 8th, so he's only played 7 seasons, he's had 4 quarterback 1 seasons in PPR formats, standard formats. Quarterback scoring is the same. This guy has finished as high as 2, 4, 7, and 10 in his career. So this is a guy that's capable of putting the numbers up. I know last year was the first year without Amari. We were waiting for CeeDee Lamb to take that step forward. Now you're saying there's no Dalton Schultz, excuse me. So I could see why everybody's saying like, hey, let's pump the brakes. This guy could go backwards. He made T.Y. Hilton a second half star last year. For those of you who remember the T.Y. Down the stretch there in Dallas. But I do think that Dallas addresses wide receiver at some point in this draft. Gets Dak another weapon. I think Jake Ferguson's a guy that if he ends up being the tight end, he could be very, very efficient. However, I do kind of view this the same way you do, Brant. One of those elite tight ends would make all the world of difference for Dak. Again, this is a guy that, he's probably left such a sour taste in his mouth, very similarly to what we talked about with Jerry Jeudy and Russell Wilson previously on the show, that this guy's probably attainable. And in a super flex draft, if you could go get this guy, like, okay, Brant, right now, I've got Trey Lance, right? And there's still a lot of hype surrounding Trey Lance. I'd probably be a fairly smart person to go trade my Trey Lance and a little something on my end potentially for Dak Prescott. Maybe it's the other way around because in Dynasty, the youth factors in. Trey Lance hasn't done a darn thing in the NFL. Nothing. Not a thing. He started in a sloppy rain fest in Chicago, and then he broke his ankle the next week. Dak Prescott's been effective for 7 seasons for fantasy, and, it's just that the sour taste in people's mouth and the fact that, on the opposite side of that coin, Trey Lance is young. He's still a mystery. Everybody wants to have that next great thing. Everybody wants to have that Patrick Mahomes before they're Patrick Mahomes. So people are willing to hold out on guys like Trey Lance over an established vet like Dak, who's probably going to give you another 4 or 5 years of very good fantasy numbers before there starts to be a real decline.
Yeah, Dak has left definitely a sour taste in my mouth, and I didn't even own him last year. If you can go get him to be your QB2 in a super flex league, then absolutely. The digression or the added interceptions that he had, almost 10 or 11 straight games he had an interception. Like 6 out of those 10 he had multiple interceptions. It just he started to show in my mind as I watched him, he started to show why he was a later round draft pick. I believe he was a day 3 pick. I think he can, if they add the right weapons, I do think he can get back to that. But if they don't add really anything, I think Tony's going to help out a lot. If they don't decide to add another back, I think Tony Pollard will help out his stats a little bit because he does have that breakaway speed on those short dump off routes that Zeke was missing. And we did see that out of Tony. But right now with only Tony and CeeDee Lamb, I can't jump on that train with you, man. I just can't. He's left a sour taste in my mouth, and he's slowly just declining every year, and so I just don't know.
Hey, listen, Dak plays in he plays in the Lone Star State. I'm willing to be alone with this star and tell you this guy's going to be back to a quarterback 1 this year. There's not room enough for both of us because we all know everything's bigger in Texas and 2 fat boys don't fit. So, Brant, I know next week we'll be back with some kind of content. I don't know what it is off the top of our head yet. Obviously, this week you and I are going to need to get together, maybe sit in the sunshine, put our heads together, and hopefully not laugh too hard at some kind of softball or something, athletic feats, if you will, and maybe we'll come up with some kind of a decent idea for Monday's show. I kind of think we'll talk about it later, but I got some ideas here that I think would be fun. To do next week. We'll see how you feel about those. But definitely looking forward to getting some live feed from you. I did want to throw it out here too. Myself and our producer from In Season for our live start sits, Josh Rodriguez, and I are going to be live, discussing each and every pick. There's a potential that we may have Seth from DWF on there as well to break down some defensive stuff, as well as potentially getting the second half of the Fatboyz to chime in live from Kansas City. Potentially, maybe we'll have him on before the draft kicks off because I know he's going to be. It's going to be loud where he's at. We'll see, but definitely some things to look forward to as the draft kicks off next week. I'm excited for it, Brant, and I'm not even going, so I'm sure that there'll be a couple days next week you lose sleep.
Oh yeah. But just so you know, if we sit in the sunshine too much, I may end up looking like your Atlanta Falcons logo here, a bright red, and maybe a little different face on me. I may have to start bringing a little umbrella to work to sit underneath. I may have to bring my own personal shade.
It'll be easier for people to find you at the draft. It'll be like you got highlighted.
I'll look like a Chiefs fan.
Hey, maybe you'll get free barbecue. It's a win-win. I don't see the problem. Defending NFL champs, free barbecue. It's a step in the right direction. Anyway, we will talk about it on the off script here and get back and see where we're at next week. Anyway, whether we come out with anything, it may be the stupidest episode ever on Monday, but it's going to be good week next week because we're going to have more lives at you at the end of the week. I do want to leave off with one other thing though. Guys, make sure you're liking the YouTube channel. Make sure you're liking stuff on Facebook. You're commenting on stuff on Facebook. There's so many people behind the scenes doing all kinds of hard work to make this a successful thing. Brant and I really have the easiest job out of everybody. You got Jake Ahoon behind the scenes. Jeremiah is the godfather of the whole page. Seth's putting out amazing content with his DWF stuff. We got Nick Wright also coming at you, doing a lot of live graphics, as well as all the guys on the page just putting out great content every single day. Those guys are grinders, man. So make sure you're showing those guys love. Make sure you're throwing likes on the YouTube channel so you get notifications when we go live.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of guys, a lot of time put into this. Getting all this out, and it's going to get pumping out, and it's really going to get down and deep in depth right after next week after the draft. But as always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.